We are coming to you with urgent breaking developments out of Israel. And what we are about to report is not another chapter in the pattern of missile exchanges that this conflict has established over recent weeks.
We have to go. Inside now. I'm coming!
What happened in the last hour is something categorically different. Something that every government, every airline, every military planner, and every civilian watching this conflict from a distance will feel immediately and personally. Iran has struck Ben Gurion International Airport. Videos are arriving right now. From the perimeter road, from the terminal observation areas, from mobile phones of travelers who were inside the departures hall when the strikes hit. The footage shows aircraft on fire on the tarmac. 3 confirmed aircraft destroyed, not damaged, not grounded by nearby concussions, not evacuated in time. Destroyed. Burning on the runway in footage that is already circulating on every major platform and in every newsroom on the planet. Ben Gurion is not a military installation in the narrow sense of that term. It is Israel's primary international gateway. The airport through which 3.5 million passengers move every year under normal conditions. The facility that connects Israel to Europe, to North America, to every major hub in the global aviation network. The infrastructure node that has, for the entire duration of this conflict, remained operational. A signal, maintained deliberately and at considerable logistical effort, that Israeli civilian life had not been fully disrupted by Iranian missile fire. That signal has been extinguished tonight. And here is the detail that is forcing every defense analyst watching this footage to stop and reconsider everything they believed about what Iran was willing to target and what Iran's missiles were capable of reaching with precision. The Patriot did not stop this. The Iron Dome did not stop this. The strikes reached the tarmac. They reached the aircraft. They reached the international airport that the entire layered American-Israeli missile defense architecture was supposed to protect. Let us be precise about what that means technically, because precision matters here. Ben Gurion Airport sits southeast of Tel Aviv, inside the coverage envelope of multiple Patriot PAC-3 batteries that have been repositioned and reinforced specifically because of its strategic value. Airport infrastructure, fuel storage, runway systems, aircraft on the ground, represents a target category that Israeli and American planners understood Iran would want to hit. They understood it, and they positioned assets accordingly. The radar coverage over Ben Gurion was not a gap in the architecture. It was one of the most deliberately protected corridors in the entire Israeli air defense network. And the missiles got through anyway. The reason requires understanding what Iran appears to have fired based on the trajectory data and the impact pattern visible in the footage. This was not a conventional ballistic missile attack. The dispersion of impacts across the tarmac, the way the strikes are distributed across multiple aircraft positions rather than concentrated at a single point, is consistent with a missile system employing maneuvering terminal guidance. A system that does not simply follow the arc it was launched on, but actively steers itself toward its designated coordinates in the final phase of flight. A system that, by the time the Patriot radar has established a track and computed an intercept solution, is no longer where that solution predicted it would be. The PAC-3 interceptor operates on a hit-to-kill principle. It must physically collide with the incoming threat. To collide with something, you must know where it will be when your interceptor arrives. A missile that changes where it is going in its terminal phase defeats that calculation, not by being faster than the interceptor, though it is, but by being somewhere other than where the math said it would be. The interceptor arrives at an empty point in space, and the missile arrives at Ben Gurion Airport. Iron Dome was never part of the answer to this threat. Iron Dome was designed for a different problem entirely: the short-range, slow-moving rocket fire from Gaza and Lebanon that shaped the early architecture of Israeli air defense thinking. Against a precision ballistic system with maneuvering terminal guidance arriving at Ben Gurion from Iranian territory, Iron Dome's engagement parameters are simply outside the relevant range. It is not that Iron Dome failed tonight. It is that Iron Dome was never the system that was supposed to handle this. The systems that were supposed to handle this, and they did not. Now let us address why Ben Gurion changes the nature of this conflict in a way that extends far beyond the immediate military picture. Every major international airline that was still operating services into Tel Aviv, and there were several that had maintained routes throughout this conflict, making careful judgments about risk thresholds and security corridors, is now grounded, not by government order, by physics. 3 aircraft destroyed on the tarmac, a runway system whose operational integrity cannot be certified while a conflict is active, and while the missile defense architecture over the airport has just demonstrated it cannot protect aircraft on the ground. No airline risk assessment in the world clears flights into a facility that absorbed what Ben Gurion absorbed tonight. Israel is now, for the first time in this conflict, functionally cut off from commercial aviation access. The humanitarian and logistical implications of that isolation are significant. Medical supplies, evacuees, international personnel, the flow of materials and people that Israel has maintained throughout this conflict through a functioning international airport. All of that flow has stopped tonight because of what is burning on that tarmac in the footage on your screen. But the significance of Ben Gurion goes beyond logistics. It goes to the message that Iran has just delivered to the international community and to the Israeli public simultaneously. Airports are the physical expression of a nation's connection to the world. They are where civilians arrive and depart, where families reunite, where commerce moves, where the assumption of normality, the assumption that life continues, that connection to the outside world is maintained, that the war exists somewhere else and has not yet consumed everything, is most visibly sustained or most visibly shattered. Iran did not strike a military base tonight. Iran struck the place where Israeli civilians board planes to visit their families in New York and London and Paris. That targeting choice is not accidental. It is a message about the scope of what Iran is willing to do, and the category of target it is now treating as legitimate. That message is landing on multiple audiences at once. The Israeli public is absorbing it alongside the footage. The government that told its citizens the airports would remain open, that normal life would continue to the maximum extent possible, that the defense architecture protecting Israeli civilian infrastructure was sufficient. That government is now looking at footage of 3 burning aircraft at Ben Gurion and has no reassurance to offer that is consistent with what those images show. The international community is absorbing it in a different register. The targeting of an international airport, a facility used by nationals of dozens of countries, by international carriers, by diplomatic personnel, pulls the conflict into a space where it is no longer purely a bilateral exchange between Iran and Israel. Every nation whose aircraft service Ben Gurion, every government whose citizens were transiting that airport, every airline whose equipment might have been parked on that tarmac under different scheduling circumstances, is now a party to the calculation of consequences. The United States is absorbing it in the register that matters most for the trajectory of this conflict. American Patriot systems were protecting Ben Gurion. That is not a claim Israel made unilaterally. It is the documented architecture of the U.S.-Israeli Defense Cooperation Framework that has operated throughout this conflict. American radar, American interceptors, American technical personnel present in support of operations. And American systems did not stop what hit Ben Gurion tonight. That failure is not Israel's alone to explain. It is Washington's. And Washington will be explaining it to allies who have purchased Patriot systems, to Congress members who have funded those systems, and to an American public that was told this technology worked. 3 aircraft burning on a runway is not an abstract defense procurement question. It is an image. And images from this conflict have consistently done more to shape its political trajectory than any press briefing or analytical assessment. There is a targeting logic visible in tonight's strike that becomes clear when you place it alongside the pattern of Iranian operations throughout this conflict. Iran has been systematically working through categories of Israeli infrastructure in an order that reflects deliberate prioritization. Military assets first, defense infrastructure second, economic infrastructure third, and now civilian connectivity infrastructure, the airport, the symbol of normalcy, the physical gateway to the outside world. Each category struck has imposed costs on the previous category's significance. Striking military assets imposed operational costs. Striking defense infrastructure degraded the protection of everything beneath it. Striking economic infrastructure imposed financial and psychological costs. And striking Ben Gurion imposes a cost that is simultaneously practical, symbolic, psychological, and international. All at once, in a single set of images that require no analytical framework to be understood by any viewer anywhere. Iran has been reading a script, and tonight, Ben Gurion was the next page. What Israel does in response to tonight's strike involves calculations that did not exist before the airport was hit. A response severe enough to satisfy the domestic political demand, and that demand will be overwhelming, because the footage of burning aircraft is exactly the kind of visceral, undeniable imagery that Israeli public opinion responds to with maximum pressure on its government. Risks further Iranian escalation against civilian infrastructure that is now proven to be reachable. A response calibrated to avoid further escalation risks looking to an Israeli public already watching burning aircraft like a government that has lost the capacity to impose costs on Iran commensurate with what Iran is imposing on Israel. There is no clean option available tonight. There has not been a clean option available at any point in this conflict. But the options available after Ben Gurion was struck are less clean than they were before. And the choices made in the next hours, in the war rooms in Jerusalem and in the situation rooms in Washington, will determine whether this conflict finds a boundary that both sides can live with, or whether it continues into territory that neither side planned to enter when it began. The footage from Ben Gurion is still coming in. The fires on the tarmac are still burning. The aircraft that were on those runways will not fly again. And the question that everyone watching those images is asking, how did the missiles get through? And what does it mean that they did? Is the question that the architects of this conflict's defense architecture must now answer. We are monitoring all developments. We will not leave this coverage. Stay with us.